to get to Iran because this is a massive, massive story that's going to continue on. It's going to continue on. There are the drums of war are beating in Washington, D.C., Blake, and we have some new intel, if the reporting's correct, that there's some very specific people within the administration that have worked to derail these war plans. Tell us about this story.
Yeah, Andrew. So this came out yesterday, late yesterday, and what the story is it says that basically since last fall, there's been the development of plans for a series of airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. As described in the reporting, I think the New York Times had it first, or at least with the most detail. They said that the idea was to do strikes on Iran's facilities that could, it said, set them back by about a year in terms of pursuing a nuclear weapon. And the idea was the strikes would be conducted by Israeli jets, but inevitably they would probably need U.S. support, buy-in. There was even discussion that we would give more direct support by, for example, moving U.S. jets into Israel, which I'm not sure, but I don't know if America's ever actually based our own fighter aircraft in Israel before, so it might be a new step. But anyway, there was this buildup. There was building more and more momentum, and then other figures in the administration pushed back, said we should not race towards war, we should focus on diplomacy, and they said that, first I'll read directly from the New York Times. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, presented a new intelligence assessment that said the buildup of American weaponry in the Middle East could potentially spark a wider conflict with Iran that the United States did not want. And then it goes on to say that Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Vice President J.D. Vance all voiced doubts about the attack. And so certainly for us, this feels like a great vindication. We were big supporters of J.D. Vance as vice president, and of course Trump's picks for Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. And I think, we just said a moment ago on Twitter that could you imagine the people in those exact jobs before, where we had John Kelly as chief of staff, we had James Mattis as Secretary of Defense, we had Mike Pence as vice president. Could you imagine any of those guys stopping a march toward war with Iran? The exact opposite. We had, I believe, our President Trump's first Director of National Intelligence stepped away because he thought we weren't hawkish enough on Iran. So we're really seeing the difference in the personalities, the difference in perspectives that we've brought to the second administration on this extremely important topic.
Well, Blake, what this made me think of is the signal gate, right? Where you saw J.D. Vance weigh in and basically say, listen, do we have to really do this now? Maybe we need to build up the PR for this, the messaging for this. We need to get our plans in place. And Hegseth was like, hey, listen, we can do this now. I don't think there's, we're going to benefit by waiting. We've got to clear these sea lanes and nobody else. But you saw that back and forth. And I think importantly, you saw J.D. Vance being a skeptic. Instantly, his perspective on it was that we should be skeptical of getting embroiled in these, these Middle East quagmires. I think in the sea lane story, Signal Gate, there was a different calculus, right? They were disrupting ships and vessels, and they were firing at U.S. ships. And so obviously they were different calculus. They made a different decision. In that instance, they decided to move forward. But I love that there is this initial skepticism from the traditional, drums of war, Washington, D.C., military industrial complex, business as usual, and that you're seeing this play out in such a way that gives us more time with Iran. For example, we've been told all week that there's going to be this meeting in Rome, I believe, with Iran to see about peace talks. And President Trump has said that he wants Iran to be a great country, a great place to live. He wants the people to thrive, but they will not have a nuclear weapon. And so you see these dynamics within this administration. And Trump 2.0, though, to your point, Blake, you couldn't imagine this type of skepticism, caution. We know that President Trump is not afraid to use lethal force. He used the mother of all bombs, of course, to take out Soleimani. He took out ISIS. He's not afraid to use weapons of war to defend the American interests when those American interests are properly represented. But this is a really powerful display of the contrarians within the office. I think to your point, Blake, I think Americans should look at this and be very, very grateful that we have prudent, thoughtful people in leadership.